Now we have this panel discussion. This is my left, right? Yeah, that's my left. So to my left, I have Keely Tomlinson from Danny Boy Beer Works. Now Elise Lane, sir. Oh, okay. Elise Lane from Scarlet. Nobody cares about that. Okay. Elise Lane from Scarlet Lane Brewery. And then we have Curtis Cummins from Switchyard Brewery. And we have the hometown hero, Uncle John, over there on the left, John Myers. So welcome. Thank you all for taking some time out of your busy day to come to Columbus, Indiana, and help us do something good around some beer. All right, let's get this party started, right? Y'all, did y'all notice in the movie, though, like how much beer head was on them beers that they was pouring? Hey, more head, y'all. More head, y'all. Hey, I'll give everyone a warm-up question, just a little softball toss. Keely, your first craft beer, where were you and what was the experience like?
I would have to say the Broad Ripple Brew Pub in Broad Ripple in Indianapolis. I mean, really, that and Bruges was where I fell in love with craft beer. You know, it was like really in Indianapolis back in the day, right? It was the only places to go. I think the Broad Ripple Brew Pub is the oldest brew pub in Indiana.
Really? I know that.
Yeah, and John Hills, basically started that. So, they're kind of like an English style, but yeah, and then Bruges came in and they did Belgian beers, and really like that's where it all started for me.
What was that beer that you tried? That very first one?
Oh, I used to drink the Lawnmower back in the day, which is like not like really cool. On craft, but
What you drinking, like Natty Daddies or what?
No. It was just like a light ale.
Okay.
It was supposed to be a beer for like drinking while you mowed the lawn. That's why it was called the Lawnmower.
Okay. Oh, how about you, Elise?
So the first craft beer that I was drinking with regular kind of in a regular situation is Wednesday nights at the Vogue in Broad Ripple. You could get $2 Sierra Nevada Pale Ales.
Ooh.
It was Retro Rewind Wednesday nights. Graduated from Butler in '03. So there's my age. There's where Sierra Nevada was. Bumped up my age just a hair, and I started going over to Brew Pub. Oh yeah, I graduated in '03. What?
What?
I'm older. I'm old.
What?
I just turned 38 last month. I'm fine. Whatever.
Word up.
I guess I'm the pup of the group.
So what about you, Kurt? What was your first one?
So I actually had a buddy of mine that lived in St. Louis.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I got a story. So he actually, I moved him to St. Louis, and my very first craft beer I remember very distinctly. So I worked at Oliver Winery for about 6 years. That's where I actually got my first step into, I think, beer, coincidentally enough, was from the winery. And I remember when I interviewed at Oliver, I like sweet wine, their blackberry wheat, and their soft red. I remember saying that during my interview. And the lady was like, "Do you only like sweet wine?" And I said, "Well, I could learn to appreciate the dry reds." And she goes, "That's exactly the answer I want to hear." And so after learning how to taste, right? They taught me how to taste, how to do the 5 S's, how to do sensory analysis. I started liking dry wine, but then I started drinking beer because when my buddies would all go out to the local bars in Bloomington, they would say, "Hey, Curtis, do you want to go out and grab some beer?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And they'd be like, "Curtis, you're going to go drink cider. You're not going to drink beer." So my number one craft beer that I started drinking, I found at Yogi's when they were on 10th Street. I actually started drinking Schlafly number 15, which was they brewed for their 15th anniversary, and it was a dark wheat, really noticeable banana clove, banana type characteristics. So Schlafly number 15 is what got me into craft beer.
Word up, Schlafly. Uncle John, what are you up to over there?
All right, I'm going to take a liberal view as to what a craft beer is. I've always been intrigued by craft beer. I've always grown up intrigued by imported beers and microbrewed beers, as they called them back in the day before the craft beer label. I remember hearing the Jim Cook commercials for Sam Adams where he talked about spilling more, or how the big brewery spilled more beer a year than he made. And I always was like, oh, I'm interested in this. I want to know more about this. And when I turned 21 in 1994, I went to my first bar because before then you convince an older cousin or something to buy you beer, and you're getting like not good beer. I think the best beer I'd had up to that point was a Corona. So,
people love Corona out here.
So the first bar that I went to was the Columbus Bar, and asked a server, hey, I want a microbrew or import beer, and he said, well, I think the best beer we have is Newcastle Brown Ale.
Word.
And I said, I'll have one, and it was downhill from there.
Awesome. Hey, thank you for sharing that. I think everybody has that first craft beer story, like that first love that got them into craft beer. That's awesome. You're sitting next to me, so I'm going to ask you the next question. You did pick the hot seat. Keely Tomlinson. The word craft gets thrown around, right? And the name of the movie was For the Love of Craft. People talk about craft beer, craft. As a brewer, when you hear the word craft in relation to beer, what do you think of? What is craft to you as a brewer, a head brewer?
Man, that's actually kind of a hard question because, I
didn't mean to do that.
Well, that's fine. It's fine. So like if you ask me so Sam Adams was in the movie, if you asked me like is Sam Adams craft, I'd be like, parts of them maybe, right?
Ooh, okay.
I feel like, and it's hard. It's a hard description. Like craft, I would think generally is, people caring about the product that they make, right?
Word.
And so that's what brings a lot of us to, beer in particular, right? Like, I got into beer, but I didn't start through the normal methods. And so it was about, for me, because I started in dairy earlier, right? I worked at Traders Point. And so for me, I wanted to make a product that I was proud of, right? And so it wasn't always about beer, but, eventually it kind of became that way. And so I would say that the important thing is that the people who produce it are really, involved. When I say involved, I mean that in all levels, like you care about the product that you produce, that's the thing that is the biggest driver for me of what is craft and what's not. And so, but on the other hand, I think there's a scale where it becomes difficult to call somebody craft versus, I think it's a very nuanced question. It's a hard thing to define.
All right, but I think you did a pretty good job of. I got a different question for her.
Oh man!
But I think that's a good way to describe that from a brewer's perspective. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Elise,
What do you got for me?
Hey.
Let's do this.
Let me scroll over here. Oh, it was so funny because I had questions for you, but then I watched the movie and I was like, ooh, I got another one. So, much love to you because she had you called it what was the email you said?
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic mash tun debacle.
Debacle. I had a day, y'all. I had a day.
And she still showed up. So give a little bit of love to the whole girl because she didn't have to come, but she still came. What struck me in the movie was when Kevin Blodger was like kind of screwing around with that thing. He's like, oh, I don't know how that break. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you have this mash tun debacle. So what do? You're going about your day, you're brewing beer, everything's good, and then your mash tun just takes a crap.
Oh, yeah, it does.
What are some of the things as not only a brewer, but a brewery owner? when things like that happen, I mean, what do you do? How do you handle that kind of thing? And I think people think, oh yeah, brewing beer is so great and it's all easy and it's all, unicorns and flowers and everything, but there are some challenges that come along with that.
Yeah, first of all, there may be a couple times in this movie today that I wanted to cry. I've already cried probably a couple times today.
Anybody got some Kleenex out there for the homegirl?
It's not even like that. It's this love of craft. It's this love of what you do. And then you have something that blows up in your face, and you had something else blow up in your face last week, and you had something blow up in your face the week before. And sometimes you just want to punch it and you want to say, why? But then you know what you do? You get on your hands and knees, you take it apart. If you can't pull it, you find an engineering company that'll come down there, use 2.5 tons to rip something out for you, and you figure it out. And that's what craft is. It's you love it, you do it, you push it, and guess what? Tomorrow, I'm gonna go back in there and I'm gonna do the same thing again. Hopefully better, hopefully my machine loves me more. But it is all about right now. It's about having a beer, about talking about what we love and figuring out. It was a bad day today, but I've had some really good days today.
That's right.
And so I've got to put all of that in perspective. And Keely told me, like, you're sitting next to me. It's a good day. And I'm like, fine. It's all right.
I gotta comment on this. I've known Elise since they pretty much started that brewery, and she and her husband have literally put so many man hours into doing exactly that.
1 man hour.
Yeah, which is tearing apart equipment and figuring it out. So if anybody deserves an applause for having to deal with the crap that they have, being a small business owner is really difficult.
That is the truth. That is the truth. So my man Curtis, get on the mic.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, you want to know something, man? One of the things that really struck me when we did our podcast, and I was watching the movie and I was listening to some of these people's stories. By the way, you can check out the podcast by checking out moheadyall.com. Just saying. For sure. But when we had that podcast, man, there was so many things that you said that struck me, and then Heaven was crying. I mean, it was all kinds of craziness. But you were talking about how it took 3 times in an event for Switchyard to even become Switchyard. And that blew me away, man. Talk a little bit about 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and you was about ready to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
But then one thing happened, and the rest is history.
So I actually want to bounce really quick off of.
You can't be diverting, man. Don't
No, I'm not
be
going to
messing
divert.
up
I'm
my
not going to
cheat.
divert. But I do think it's really important that because when you asked the first question, I was prepping in my mind what I was going to say.
That's what you get.
Right. But what's difficult is if this panel of professional brewers and brewery owners, if we can't determine what the fuck is craft, how's the consumer
Truth.
going to do that?
Truth.
And this is why the Brewers Association
Thank you for
released the
swearing on
independent.
stage.
You're welcome. That's why the Brewers Association released the Independent Craft Brewer Seal. Right? So that way consumers, the minute that you see that seal, and I saw Seymour Brewing Company, they
Yep.
have it on their logo.
Shout out to Richie.
Yep, Richie. We're putting it onto our logo wear as well. All of our brewer shirts are going to have the Independent Craft Brewer seal. We
Word
even
up.
painted it on the damn side of our building.
It's true.
Right? Because we want to shout from the rooftops that we are independent. We're not owned by anybody else. We're not owned by the big guys. And I think that makes it really clear to the consumer because craft is really, really blurry.
Truth.
And so if we can't figure out what the hell it is, how's the consumer supposed to? So anyways, that's,
Thank you for
my
throwing that in
bounce
there.
off of
Okay,
that.
I'll let you block my chief for that.
yeah. Okay, so when we set out to open Switchyard, it took 7 years to get it open. Myself and my business partner both used to be paramedics in Monroe County. Both worked in public safety, loved home brewing in the garage. I like to joke that now that I own a brewery, I've never brewed once except for cold brew coffee, because apparently that's what my job is now. I sit at a desk and I do a bunch of other stuff apparently. So I love it. I'll never trade it in for a day. But we had so many times that we could have given up and that we didn't. I remember on one of the fire trucks when I was growing up, my very first fire department was written on the officer's door, persistence against all odds. And that's what has always driven me as an entrepreneur. Just literally what you were just saying, persistence against all odds. Like, you could have the worst day in the world, things could just fall apart, but you have to keep going. And I think that's what separates an entrepreneur from someone that doesn't start a business. People don't realize how close they were to succeeding when they gave up. And for me, that was the first location for Switchyard fell through. The developers told us that we were too young of business owners. We had never opened a business before. We had no business building a brand new building, build to suit. Yet we had already announced that we were opening in that location in Bloomington, so that was cool.
Yikes.
Yeah. Then number 2, that location that we publicly announced, the building owner sold it to someone else while we were in lease negotiations, so that went through. But everything happens for a reason. I'm a very big proponent of that. And so that fell through, which was a good thing, because it would have been a logistics nightmare and we would not have been able to have the facility that we have now. Finally,
Beautiful
I
facility.
gave up. Thank you. And I gave up, and I went to my wife and I said, honey, this is never going to happen. So we started making plans to move to Nashville, Tennessee, where we have friends. I started applying for other breweries. I just wanted in the industry. And I wrote an email to Jackalope Brewing Company down in Nashville. Great brewery. Yeah. And I said, hey, here's a couple pages of my business plan. I'm passionate about this craft. I will do anything. I'll work front of house, back of house, clean kegs, sales. I will do anything just to get in. My family's planning on moving there this summer. And they emailed me back within 6 hours. And they said, Curtis, your business plan is awesome. It's obvious you have a passion. You need to open your own fucking brewery. And literally, less than 72 hours later, we signed the lease on the space where we're at now.
Say word,
So,
son.
yeah, pretty cool.
That's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up. Man, that was fantastic. Thank you. Uncle John. Uncle John. You are an OG. And people, I don't know that people really get the fact that you've been brewing for as long as you have. And my question to you is, what was the scene like when you first started? Because they're talking about what it was back in the day, and I'm thinking to myself, well, damn, I think John was kind of brewing back then. So what was the scene like in Columbus, Indiana, when wasn't nobody brewing no beer, and even in Indiana? Because back then, I don't think there was a lot of people brewing beer back then. So what's the scene like, Uncle John?
It was dismal. It was sad. Yeah.
And there you have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the pleasure of working at a beer-centric bar when I was in college. And so I got exposed to a lot of craft beer and imported beer and kind of took it for granted that that was just something that was happening. And after college, I moved back to Columbus and there was not anything happening. There was...
What year was that? When was that, John?
2001.
God bless America.
Back,
That's a
yeah.
long time ago.
So, yeah, so that's... it's forever
I
ago.
mean, in beer years, kind of like dog years.
Yeah. So when we started Powerhouse, there were I think 20 breweries in the state. And,
20 in the state.
and there's like plus 100.
Almost
to that
200, I
now.
think.
Yeah. So that's a huge difference. And I think the big difference in the business is that at that time, if you could be passionate about beer, you could open a brewery basically anywhere and people would find you. They would seek you out because they were hungry for it. And now there's a lot more variety, which I think is good. And I think it's certainly good for the consumer. But now you have to be a little more diligent about what you're doing, and you have to create an environment and an atmosphere that people want to come to. And you're more than just selling your passion and your craft. You've got to sell an environment and a story and those sort of stuff.
No fanning. You have your turn. Just be quiet.
I think there's a question and answer at the end, isn't there?
God damn it, Fanny.
That's right. I've spent a lot of the early days educating people. I've converted
Mike,
a lot
get
of
your boy.
people from Bud Light to. Thank you.
There you go. I can hear myself just fine. No, I was just reflecting with John that even before that, he was the first one to bring nitrogen into, am I there?
No, you just ain't talking loud
got me.
enough now that you have a microphone.
No. So no, you brought nitrogen into town first. You got obscure beers, and I mean, we packed that place, and I mean that was well before the brewery, but it was just the idea of something besides Bud and Miller products, but. And this is even broader. Once everybody gets successful, what's your goal? You grow, you get bought out, and then Samuel Adams turns into something that gets purchased after that. So
All right, you're done.
Yeah.
Let you ain't on the panel. So
Thanks for proving my point, though.
As you were saying.
Back in the day, you open a place with good beer, and lots of weirdos would find you.
Now it's just a lot of weirdos hoping to find each other, I think.
Yeah.
Your point, actually, I'm going to jump off of this real quick about how you want to be at a certain point, you get to a certain size and you think you're going to get bought. Well, look at Sam Adams. They're craft, right? They're independent, they're craft, but they just bought Dogfish.
Truth.
You can look at the math any way you want to. That's what happened, which is fine. They are still going to carry out what they're going to do. But you can see at any level of breweries across the entire country where you become part of a conglomerate, you become part of a group, because sometimes right now it gets real lonely out there. You need buying power, and that's like in your glass, that's in your hops, that's making sure that you can have people on your staff that are going to be taken care of. I'm not saying everybody sells to AB. I'm not saying everybody sells to Sam Adams. I say everybody has to work together, and that's another definition we have to look at in the industry of what independence and what craft is.
Well, and to counterpoint that, I mean, you're talking about buying power, whatever, but it's about paying the bills and the
Bills need to
and
be
the
paid.
employees at the lowest level, right? So that's the thing. Like, we as head brewers are paid well, but our assistants are not. And it's not that we don't want to pay them well. It's just that they don't.
Preach, girl. Preach.
Yeah,
That's
so
real
like,
life.
what I do is valuable, but what Dakota, my assistant, does is equally valuable, and why should he not be compensated for that, right? So that, and like a lot of people start in craft, and we start in craft, and we get paid very low quantities because we care about what we do, but there comes a point where we got to make a living.
Truth.
And so that's the thing I think that craft needs to move beyond. And so when people complain about people selling out, I understand that to a certain extent. You want your people to get paid, and those people deserve it because they put in the hours.
Well, let's also talk about the consumers that want to complain about a $5 pint of beer.
Oh, well, let's talk about that.
And I will, like, that's fine. I'm in a college town, right, where the $2 Tuesday is king. Right, so how does my tap room, which is in the middle of downtown Bloomington, how do we compete where I'm selling a pint of beer for $5 including tax, right? 8% sales tax, 7% goes to the state, 1% goes to build a new convention center in Bloomington. I love how there's some chuckles out there. I'm neutral when it comes to that, but my point is, the consumer has to think about, okay, if I'm gonna, the big guys are going for off-premise. For the big guys are going to do, $6.99 six-packs, and they're doing that purposely to drive down the price to make more room on the shelf for them rather than independent craft beer. And meanwhile, just as you're saying, like, we have families too. I mean,
Truth.
we're small business, right? Which there's some sort of there's a little bit of there's a nicety. You know, like I think about a chocolate company that's in my hometown, back home in Yorktown, Indiana, and the chocolates are handmade and they're really fucking expensive. But every time I go back home, I buy those chocolates because they're fantastic, and I have no problem spending $14 or $20 for a little multi-pack because I know it's handcrafted, I know it's supporting their local family, and I know it's keeping the money there locally. But like, connecting craft to that, I think, is really important.
Word up. As we start run, y'all, you go ahead and clap. Yeah, go ahead and clap. Go ahead and clap. So we have about 5-ish minutes. People are raising hands, so there's questions out there. I'm kind of excited about this. I didn't know if people would be like, "Hey, I got questions." Yeah, she does. So.
Why don't y'all make a coalition?
You mean a union?
Well,
Because, you know.
you have like places where you all have your own beers distributed, but you have like two, you have two, and you all have the same restaurant or the same brew pub, and you have your craft beer there. I would go to there. I'd drink all your beer.
Yay for supporting local beeswax.
Tomlinson Tap Room in Indy is kind of like that for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're in the city market. They basically buy all local beer. That's kind of like their mission. I think the Brewers Guild has some sort of hand in them as well. So like, you know, so that is kind of a coalition, at least a little bit. I mean, the guild does help us out in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of small businesses that try to pull together.
A lot of it comes down to licensing and like Indiana Code 7.1 alcohol tobacco laws. It's something that I wish.
Into this now?
And distribution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna stay really high level on this, but it's something that all of you should really talk to your state reps about. I sit on the political action committee with the Brewers Guild. You know, if something as simple as like when just this weekend, my wife and I took my 2-year-old to Oliver Winery. We enjoyed a bottle of wine together. We enjoyed live music. But in my own tap room, you know, wineries and distilleries, you can have kids anywhere on the premise. Anywhere on the premise. My kid can be literally strapped to my chest, and I can do a wine tasting. However, at my own brewery, there has to be a legal separation between the bar and the tap room, which makes absolutely no sense. So these pre-prohibition laws are still these post-prohibition laws are still very much viable in Indiana. It's something that we all need to think about.
We need to think about this a lot.
Yeah, y'all can clap for that. Indiana laws need to change when it comes to beer, y'all.
Because, so we own breweries, and then I also own independent tap rooms where I have 2-way permits where I can put anybody's beer on. But at my brewery, since I produce on my location and I'm a production and I'm not building a 13-foot wall to separate it, I can only serve my beer. So if we were to do a collab on their premise and I did not make it in my house, I still can't serve it in my house technically in the state of Indiana. So that's what we're talking about. Like, we can't have coalition. I mean, we do. We have the Brewers Guild, the Brewers Association. We work together, but we have laws that kind of separate us. And I mean, it's also a 3-tier state, which separates us a little bit more and more. I do work with one of those companies, not gonna lie, but there's some thoughtfulness that needs to go into it on all ends. And for everybody to know, we try as hard as we can, but it's real hard.
Let me ask this question. What can we do as craft beer enthusiasts, consumers, things of that nature? What can we do to make changes in that space? You only got 2.5 minutes though.
Talk about it, ask questions, find the people that are going to be on those boards, find out who is actually the sponsor and authoring of bills.
Sign up for the Guild email newsletters. So if you're not already
The
getting the
Indiana Brewers
emails
Guild
from the
you're talking
Indiana
about?
Brewers Guild, get the Indiana Brewers Guild email newsletters. And when we have calls to action, when it's during session, like, do it. Like, actually email, write your legislators, say, hey, we support independent craft beer.
Word up. Oh, so we got another question. Where the mic guy go? Where the mic guy go? Oh, there's a mic right there.
I am the mic guy. A question: if you, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. If you were to sell to a larger company, what level of integrity would you maintain over what you're producing and sort of the quality of your product? In other words, would you be able to continue producing your beer, or would you have to sort of be told what to produce?
Just ask the easy question then. Why
Yeah,
don't
there
you?
you go.
Wow. I mean, I don't know what you mean by a larger company, so that's kind of the issue.
If you were to sell to, if Sam Adams were to come in and buy you, or you were to sell, I mean, we're talking about needing to make a legitimate business decision, like the gentleman on the movie you talked about in Union City, that he has a family to support.
Sure.
So there's some legitimate business decisions.
For sure.
But I also know the passion that you guys have demonstrated and was in the movie. You don't want to sort of lose your pride in what your product is. How much of that do you actually get to maintain if you were to sort of turn over the ownership?
Well, I don't have ownership at all. So, I mean, I think it would largely depend on your financial position versus their financial position, right? Like, I mean, we're a capitalist marketplace, so it really depends on what their position is versus yours. I mean, if it was my company, I'd be like, yes, I want to maintain my recipes to, and these are the ingredients we're using, and these are our standards and whatever else. But on the other hand, it really, but on the other hand, you want to take advantage of your, new, I don't know, the new guys who have better buying power than you do, and et cetera. So really, it's a balance of everything else, right? Which is it's a balance of cost versus quality. I mean, but that's what you're doing throughout the entirety of your business existence, is cost versus quality.
There are a lot of things that go into management agreements, purchasing agreements, and you can make the request. If you want to stay involved, if that's what that purchase or what that financial looks like, you can also step out and bow out. And a lot of times these companies will buy you for a name of a product, or they'll keep you on to make a specific product. So I want you to make every pale ale I make, but I'm going to make everything else because I like the way you have pale ales, and the marketplace accepts your pale ale better than my pale ale.
I think this is something that I think every company thinks about. It's a great question. And one that, I mean, I'm very transparent about how we started Switchyard, right? I worked as a paramedic, guys. Like there's no rich uncle of Switchyard. We have investors, and every single one of my investors signed on to what we believe in and our guiding principles. And I actually turned down money from some people because they just did not fit into what we felt was our guiding principles and what we wanted to bring to our community. And for me, like every single one of them asked me, what's your exit? What's your plan? Because you, as a business, you're either playing the finite game or you're playing a non-finite game. And for me, it's a non-finite game. And for me, it's my exit is I want my employees to own our company. I don't want someone else to own our company. And at the end of the day, if I sell to an ESOP, an employee stock ownership program, and if my employees own the company, and then they vote as a group that they want to sell out because it supports their family's beliefs and their retirement, then yeah, fine. But I don't believe that I should make that decision by myself as an owner because it's not just my company.
Right on.
Right.
God bless America. I wish that we could continue this conversation, but we are low on time. Real quick, and I would love to field more questions, but I'm trying to keep everybody on schedule. Real quick, the future of craft beer is very interesting right now. The contraction going into 2020, election year, there's breweries closing in Indiana, there's breweries closing all over the country. So the craft beer industry is starting to correct. Out of the four panelists here, where do you see craft beer in the next 3-5 years in the midst of glitter beer and hard cider
Jesus.
And ridiculous shit?
There's a lot of ridiculous shit out there. I think we're gonna have a contraction. I hope we're gonna have a contraction of beer that is not quality. I don't guarantee that will be the case. I think that the people with a lot of community support and with solid tap rooms in their community are going to survive for sure.
Word.
And I think you'll end up with a couple people who will become the next Sierra Nevadas and Sam Adams and whatever else, right? There'll be some people that will be big winners out of this. But I'm hoping that what we end up with is a network of neighborhoods that have quality tap rooms. That would, I think, be the best for us, and I think it'd be the best for you guys. You know, like who doesn't want a nice bar where you can go, where like your bartender knows you, and you can be like, "This is the beer I want," and it's good.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it was said really well. We don't know what's going to happen. It's probably going to get really ugly. I think we're already seeing that
Okay.
in our state, in our country. I think craft beer is hitting a rough moment. I think staying local, I think having neighborhood tap rooms where you know the person sitting at the end of the bar and then they bring somebody and then they bring
Yeah.
somebody is really, really important. And you talk about that beer when you go out. Now, I know we're throwing shade, like I don't like glitter beers either, but maybe, you know what? If John, who sits at that corner of that table every damn day, talks to you about a glitter beer, well, guess what? John's going to get one at some point because I love John. It's going to happen. It's all about a relationship, and you make a beer for that tap room because you want them to own that experience. And if that glitter means that he owns that moment, then damn it, you'll have your glitter.
And if it's executed well.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's executed well, right? Like if you want to make some like apple pie bullshit motherfucker beer and you do it great, I applaud you. It's not my cup of tea, but if you're going to do it well.
Fair enough.
Glitter and apple pie together, baby.
Oh my God, this might be a thing. A collab between Danny Boy and Scarlet Lane, an apple ale with glitter in it. Oh, Curtis.
So I'm pretty new to this game. Switchyard's been open for a year and a half now. Been following.
Congrats.
Thank you. We've been following the industry for a little bit, but in my opinion, it's the customer experience. I think the customer experience is absolutely key. If the customer comes in, and that's why we do secret shops at Switchyard. That's why we respond to every single Yelp and every single Google review, Facebook review. The customer experience is important. I also think keeping very local is really important. I have really no interest in opening a tap room outside of Bloomington. I think that Bloomington's a very special place and it makes us who we are. It allows me to keep our culture really relevant. And then to go off the glitter beer comment, I mean, we're in some really weird times right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if what you have to do to keep the lights on is to brew a alcoholic LaCroix, then I'd say do it, because you have bills to pay and you have mortgages and you have loans and you have employees. I mean, you have such a high level of responsibility as an owner that, yes, it sucks, but if that's what people are wanting at the time, I mean, just think, like, Not Your Father's Root Beer used to be like the thing.
Truth.
It was a thing, and some people made some money off of it.
Truth.
And so I don't think it's selling out. I don't think it's going against craft. I think it's survival.
Truth.
So, I'll give a really quick example of that. Urban Chestnut in St. Louis, they wanted to be part of the Fair of St. Louis. They said, hey, we want to be part of it. We'll provide beer for free. They said, no, sorry, we can't. AB's already got it. They said, fine, we still want to be a part of our community. We're going to sell hop water at water stations. Hop water. Just sparkling hop water. And they said, okay, cool, that's fine. That's not against the AB contract. It's not alcohol, fine. So they did. And then the Fair of St. Louis shut down because they had low funding, and then they were left with all this hop water. And they're like, well, what the fuck are we going to do with hop water? I'm talking like 60 barrels of hop water.
Yummy.
Right? So they started selling in their tap room for $1 a pint glass. And it sells like crazy now.
Interesting.
Just saying.
Florian's probably making
I'll
Florian's
throw-
making $1 million off of fucking hot water.
And he wants to die every second that he's making $1 million
Oh
off
my
of
God, death by
Like,
1,000 cuts, like you said in the movie.
Seriously, it is. If we know Flooring, like the head brewer of UCBC just can't deal with
So, Uncle
that.
John. What do you say?
I think craft beer has always had its glitter beers. They've always just been kind of in different forms. They've had their raspberry beers or their entry-level beers or their stuff that's easy and accessible from the masses. And I think that's fine, and I think if that can be your flagship and you can sell a lot of it, and that allows you to make the barrel-aged imperial stout, then I think that's awesome, and it's worth it. In the future, I'll get out my crystal ball here, I think you will see a lot of tap rooms. I think you'll see it. I think breweries will get smaller and they'll get bigger. So you'll have a lot of bigger players and you'll have a lot of smaller local players, hopefully. And I don't know if a lot of the local smaller tap rooms may stop brewing and they may just carry other people's beer, which we're actually in short supply of. What craft beer really needs is more tap rooms dedicated to selling craft beer that's buying from local sources. And I'm starting to see a little bit of that happen in my day job. I work with small businesses, and I see a lot of people opening restaurants and bars and wanting to source local and do that sort of thing. So hopefully that'll help sustain that.
And right on. Well, thank you. Trying to keep it on task, so we'll end the panel discussion. Whoa, what happened? Oh. We'll end the panel discussion here, but if you want to hear more, we might have our panelists on the Mohead Joe podcast. You might want to check that out. But hey, give a round of applause for our panelists who came down, took time out of their busy day to be here and share some of their insights and wisdom.